The night sky over Earth was calm, filled with millions of shining stars. It was an ordinary evening, peaceful and quiet. Then, everything changed. Without warning, the stars shifted. Something massive moved across the sky. A shadow swallowed the moonlight. Lights flickered in the heavens, growing larger, brighter, closer. Then they arrived. Hundreds of alien warships emerged from the darkness of space. Their sharp metallic forms blocked the sky. Cities across the world fell silent as people stopped what they were doing and stared. The Scifi Empire had come. A message from the invaders. All across Earth, televisions, phones, and digital billboards flickered in change. A strange figure appeared on every screen. It was tall and armored, its skin a deep shade of gray. Its eyes burned with a cold golden glow. Sharp, jagged armor covered its body, and strange symbols glowed on its chest plate. The creature smirked. "I am Supreme Commander Krivox of the Scifi Empire." The voice echoed in every language. "Your world is now under Scifi rule. Surrender, and you may be allowed to serve us. Resist, and be destroyed." For a moment, there was silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, something unexpected happened. People began to stare at the alien on their screens, not with fear, but with something else. Confusion. Amusement. A few even laughed. The first mistake. Commander Krivox expected fear. Every species the Scifi had conquered trembled before them. Some begged. Some cried. Some tried to fight, only to be crushed. But these humans, they just stared. Some tilted their heads. Others raised their eyebrows. Many had their arms crossed, watching with expressions of pure curiosity, as if they were looking at a strange bug in a jar. "What are they doing?" Krivox muttered, watching the live feeds from Earth. "They are not reacting as expected, Supreme Commander," one of his officers replied. Krivox's golden eyes narrowed. "Are they stunned into silence?" The officer hesitated. "No, sir. I believe they are judging us." Krivox scoffed. "Impossible. Every species feared the Scifi." He turned back to the screen, watching as one human, a male with messy hair, leaned closer to a camera and squinted. Then, in a language translated through their primitive machines, the human spoke. "Why do you guys look so serious? You trying too hard to be scary?" Another voice joined in, a young woman's. "Yeah, what's with the armor? You guys look like medieval knights from a cheap movie." More voices, more reactions. Some humans laughed. Others took screenshots and shared them online with ridiculous captions. The Scifi, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, had just become an internet joke. Krivox's fury. On the Scifi flagship, Krivox's hands curled into fists. His claws scraped against the armrest of his throne. "They dare mock us." His officers looked nervous. No other species had ever done this. The usual reaction was terror, not laughter. "We should attack immediately," one officer suggested. "Crush their defenses before they realize their mistake." Krivox nodded. "Begin orbital bombardment. Let them learn what it means to." An alarm blared across the command deck. "Sir," another officer shouted, "Earth's planetary defenses are activating." Krivox's eyes widened. "Impossible. Their technology is primitive." The officer quickly brought up scans. Across the planet, hidden defense platforms rose from the ground. Satellites powered up in orbit. Laser cannons and missile systems locked onto the Scifi fleet. The humans were not frozen in fear. They were preparing for war. Krivox leaned forward, watching in disbelief. Humans did not cower. They did not kneel. They acted. The stare of a human. On Earth, as the first alien energy blasts rained down, humanity moved fast. Military forces across the world scrambled into action. Fighter jets launched. Automated turrets activated. Soldiers and engineers worked together, turning civilian technology into weapons. Hackers broke into Zarkari communication networks, feeding them false information. Civilians armed themselves, turning cities into fortresses. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for the unknown. Now, they faced it. In the midst of this chaos, one Zarkari officer studied human behavior through his monitor. His claws trembled as he whispered a terrifying realization. "They're not just laughing at us." His voice was barely above a whisper. "They're studying us. A war begins." Krivox had planned for an easy conquest. He thought humans were weak, too slow, too undisciplined, too emotional to be a real threat. But now, as Earth's defenses fired back, he realized his mistake. Humans might stare in amusement. They might sleep long hours. They might joke in the face of danger. But when the moment came, when the first attack landed, they didn't hesitate to fight back. The battle for Earth had begun. Zarkari warships hovered over the planet, their massive engines humming like storm clouds. Their weapons fired bright energy blasts, cutting through the night sky like burning spears. They had done this 100 times before, arriving on a new world, crushing its defenses, and making its people kneel. But something was wrong. The humans did not kneel. They did not panic. They fought back. The unexpected resistance. On the Zarkari flagship, Supreme Commander Krivox stared at the holographic battlefield map. His golden eyes narrowed as red warning symbols flashed across the display. "This is impossible," he muttered. Earth's defenses were primitive. At least, that's what Zarkari intelligence had reported. Their ships were slow, their weapons outdated, their armies small. And yet, human counterattacks were working. All across the planet, air defense systems launched missiles, hitting Zarkari landing ships before they could touch the ground. Cities activated hidden energy shields, blocking bombardments that should have leveled them. And strangest of all, humans did not fight like other species. They were not predictable. They did not follow a single strategy. Every region, every country, every battlefield was different. Some used brute force, others used tricks and traps. Some even used fake surrender signals, only to ambush Zarkari troops the moment they landed. The Empire had never seen anything like it. The stare of defiance. Krivox turned his gaze to the live video feeds from the battlefield. He expected to see fear. He expected humans to cower. But instead, they stared. Even in the middle of a war, humans paused to look at the Zarkari. Their expressions were unreadable, half amusement, half study. One soldier, a woman in a dusty uniform, hid behind cover, firing at the enemy. Between shots, she peeked at a fallen Zarkari warrior, tilting her head. "You guys really do have glowing eyes, huh?" she muttered. Another human, a young man with a bandaged arm, watched as an alien transport ship exploded in the sky. He let out a low whistle. "Didn't think that'd work. Guess we're smarter than we look." The Zarkari did not understand. Why were these humans so calm? Why did they stare as if they were not the ones under attack? Krivox felt something deep in his chest, something he had not felt in years. Uncertainty. The first mistakes of the Zarkari. Their defenses should have fallen by now, Krivox growled. He turned to his officers. "I want full ground invasions. No more precision strikes. No more hesitation." His second-in-command, General Ralvik, hesitated. "But Supreme Commander, we are facing unexpected resistance. Perhaps we should." Krivox slammed a fist against the control panel. "Enough. Humans are primitive. They are disorganized. If they will not surrender, then we will force them to kneel." The order was given. Zarkari forces descended from the sky in massive numbers. It was time to end this war. The human mind games begin. Krivox thought a full invasion would break humanity. He was wrong. Because humans had something more dangerous than weapons. They had wit. The moment Zarkari forces landed, human psychological warfare began. It started with small things. Human soldiers used strange phrases over communication channels. Hey, you guys ever heard of coffee? You should try it. Might help you keep up. Wow, for an advanced species, you sure fall for the same tricks over and over. Bet your armor's really uncomfortable. Want a break? At first, the Zarkari ignored these words. They meant nothing. But as the days passed, something strange happened. Zarkari warriors hesitated. They started second-guessing their tactics. They made mistakes. Because for the first time in their long history, the Zarkari were fighting an enemy that did not just use guns and ships. Humans used words. And words were dangerous. The Zarkari fear spreads. Zarkari soldiers were trained for physical combat. They were built for strength, for war. But they had never faced an enemy that mocked them in battle. They had never fought an opponent that laughed under fire. Even their superior officers felt it. Reports came in from the battlefield. Zarkari troops abandoned positions after hearing creepy human songs played over loudspeakers. Entire squads hesitated before attacking because human civilians stood in the streets, just staring. Some warriors even removed their helmets, checking their armor and reflections, wondering why humans found them so funny-looking. This was not how war was supposed to go. Krivox felt his patience slipping. These humans, he growled, they don't fight like warriors. They fight like. He stopped, because deep inside, he knew the truth. Humans fought like something worse than warriors. They fought like predators. And worst of all, they were enjoying it. The fight is far from over. The war for Earth had only begun. But already, the Zarkari were making mistakes. They had assumed humans were weak. They had assumed humans were slow. They had assumed humans would panic. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that studied them, laughed at them, and most terrifying of all, adapted faster than any species they had ever conquered. As the next wave of battles loomed, one thing was becoming clear. This was not going to be an easy war. This was going to be a nightmare. For the Zarkari, the war for Earth raged on. The Zarkari had expected an easy victory. They had expected humans to fear them, to surrender quickly, or at least to fight in a predictable way. But now, as Supreme Commander Krivox watched the battlefield reports, he realized something terrifying. The humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The unstoppable adaptation. Across Earth, human resistance grew stronger by the hour. In some cities, engineers turned construction mechs into war machines, using industrial drills and robotic arms to smash Zarkari soldiers. In the countryside, farmers used old radio towers to disrupt enemy communications. Even children helped, flying hobby drones equipped with cameras to spy on the invaders. Everywhere the Zarkari turned, humans had a new trick waiting for them. They are changing their tactics too fast, one Zarkari officer reported. His voice trembled. Every time we adapt, they find a new way to counter us. Krivox clenched his fists. Impossible. They are disorganized. They are weak. But deep down, he was no longer sure. The chaos of human warfare. On the battlefield, Zarkari warriors faced a nightmare. They were trained for order. Their armies moved in perfect formations, following strict battle strategies. Every soldier obeyed orders without question. Humans, on the other hand, fought like wild creatures. They used hit-and-run tactics. They set traps. They attacked in unpredictable ways, using confusion as a weapon. And worst of all, they had no fear. Zarkari soldiers watched in horror as human fighters charged into battle laughing, cracking jokes even under enemy fire. Some played music through speakers while shooting, turning war into something that felt like a game. One squad of Zarkari warriors tried to hold a captured city block. Suddenly, human voices echoed from every direction. "Hey, lizard guys, you ready for round 2? Didn't you learn your lesson last time? This is our planet. You're the guests, and you're not welcome." Then, explosions. Smoke filled the air. The Zarkari fell into chaos, firing wildly, unable to tell where the humans were coming from. By the time the smoke cleared, the city block was lost. The psychological war deepens. As the battles continued, something even more dangerous happened. Zarkari soldiers started losing confidence. They had never fought an enemy like this before. Every battle was different. Every fight felt like a trick. And everywhere they turned, humans were watching them, studying them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A Zarkari sniper once held a rooftop position for hours, scanning the streets below for human movement. Then he saw it. A human soldier stood in the middle of the road, completely exposed. He wasn't hiding behind cover. He wasn't even holding a weapon. He was just standing there, staring. The sniper hesitated. His instincts screamed, "This is a trap." But before he could act, a grenade landed beside him. Boom! Another rooftop lost. Another battle won by the humans. Krivox's breaking point. In the Zarkari command center, Krivox felt something he had never felt before. Frustration. For the first time in his long career, he didn't understand his enemy. "Why?" he growled. "Why do they fight like this? Why don't they follow a pattern? Why do they keep staring?" No one had an answer. Because even the Zarkari didn't know what they were truly up against. They had assumed humans were just another weak species, easy to conquer. But humans weren't weak. They were hunters. And now, the hunters had become the hunted. A war unlike any other. As Krivox watched another fleet retreat, he felt a new emotion creeping into his mind. Doubt. The Zarkari Empire had crushed countless civilizations. They had fought wars for centuries. And yet this small blue planet was doing something no other species had done. It was fighting back. And worse, it was winning. The war for Earth was no longer a simple invasion. What had started as a routine conquest had turned into a nightmare for the Zarkari. Their armies, once unstoppable across the galaxy, now faced an enemy that refused to break. Humans did not just resist. They hunted. And now, for the first time in history, the Zarkari were afraid. The disappearing soldiers. Krivox stood in front of a holographic map, his golden eyes fixed on a disturbing report. Entire squads of Zarkari soldiers were vanishing. One moment, they were securing an area. The next, gone. No distress signals. No signs of battle. Just silence. "Where are my warriors?" Krivox growled. His second-in-command, General Ralvik, hesitated. "We are uncertain, Supreme Commander. Patrols go out, but they do not return. It is as if the humans are hunting us." The word sent a shiver down Krivox's spine. Hunting. Ralvik nodded grimly. "Yes, we are no longer fighting an army, Supreme Commander. We are being hunted, one by one." Krivox clenched his fists. This was impossible. The Zarkari were stronger, faster, and had better technology. How could humans turn the tide of war so quickly? He had no answer. Traps in the shadows. On the battlefield, Zarkari soldiers marched carefully through a ruined human city. Their weapons were ready. Their scanners searched for enemies. But the streets were silent. Too silent. Then, out of nowhere, a loud whistle. The Zarkari froze. A second whistle came from behind them. Then a third from above. Their leader barked an order. "Weapons up. Scan the area." But before they could react, the shadows moved. Boom. A controlled explosion went off, collapsing part of the building above them. Heavy debris fell, crushing two Zarkari instantly. Panic spread. Then came the voices. "You should have stayed in space, lizards. You're not the hunters anymore. Welcome to Earth. Now run." The Zarkari fired wildly in all directions, but there was nothing to shoot at. The humans had vanished into the ruins. And just like that, another squad was lost. A desperate attempt to regain control. Back on the command ship, Krivox slammed his fist against the control panel. I will not allow this humiliation to continue. We are warriors. We do not hide from prey. Ralvik's voice was tight with worry. Supreme Commander, I advise that we. I want a full planetary lockdown, Krivox ordered. Scan every building, every mountain, every cave. Find them. Crush them. Ralvik hesitated. With all due respect, Supreme Commander, we do not have the numbers anymore. The word sent a chill through the room. The Zarkari had started this invasion with overwhelming forces, but now, too many had fallen. Too many had disappeared. They weren't fighting a normal war. They were fighting a ghost war, a battle where the enemy was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Krivox's breathing grew heavy. Then, what do you suggest? Ralvik swallowed. We must consider retreat. Silence filled the room. The idea was unthinkable. The Zarkari Empire had never retreated. But now, for the first time in its history, it might have to. The final warning. That night, an emergency message was sent across all Zarkari communication channels. It contained one image, a captured Zarkari soldier. His armor was removed, his weapons gone. He was unharmed, but there was something terrifying about him. He was staring directly at the camera, and he was smiling. Then, a human voice played over the message. Humanity doesn't run. Humanity doesn't surrender. You came here thinking we were weak. Now, you know the truth. You are not the hunters. You are the prey. The transmission ended. Krivox stood frozen, his mind racing. This war was no longer about conquest. It was about survival. And for the first time since the invasion began, Krivox knew the truth. The Zarkari had already lost. The war for Earth had changed. At first, the Zarkari were the hunters, and humans were the prey. But now, the roles had reversed. Humans were no longer defending. They were stalking. And the mighty Zarkari Empire, feared across the galaxy, was beginning to understand a terrible truth. They were losing. The silent retreat. Supreme Commander Krivox stood in the command center of his flagship, his golden eyes fixed on the battlefield reports. More red alerts, more vanished squads, more failed missions. His forces were crumbling. Across Earth, Zarkari warships were leaving orbit, their captains making excuses. We need to resupply, Supreme Commander. We must regroup before launching another attack. We have suffered unexpected losses. A strategic retreat is necessary. But Krivox knew the truth. They were afraid. The once mighty Zarkari warriors, who had crushed 100 worlds, were now running from humans. It was a disgrace. And yet, Krivox felt that same fear creeping into his own heart. The mind games continue. On the battlefield, the war was no longer about weapons. It was about psychology. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not rely on raw strength or superior firepower. They used fear. One night, a Zarkari camp set up in the ruins of a city. The warriors stood guard, their weapons ready. They had scanners, motion detectors, heat sensors. No enemy could sneak past them. And yet, when morning came, they found something terrifying. Every single Zarkari weapon was gone. Their rifles, their explosives, their gear, all stolen in the night. But the worst part, no one had seen or heard anything. And on the walls of their camp, written in human blood, was a single message. Still think we're weak. That day, half the Zarkari forces abandoned their posts. The humans weren't just fighting them. They were playing with them. Krivox's last gamble. Krivox clenched his fists as the reports piled up. The Zarkari Empire had conquered countless planets. They had fought countless wars. But never had they faced an enemy like this. He had one final strategy left. A massive orbital strike. If he couldn't conquer Earth, he would destroy it. The final stand. The skies above Earth filled with Zarkari warships. Hundreds of them. Their cannons glowed, preparing to fire. If they succeeded, Earth's cities would be reduced to ashes. But then, something unexpected happened. The humans attacked first. From hidden bases, underground bunkers, and disguised launch sites, Earth's defenders fired everything they had. Missiles streaked toward the sky, plasma turrets roared, and experimental railguns punched through enemy shields. In the chaos, human pilots and stolen Zarkari ships infiltrated the fleet, causing mayhem from the inside. And then came the final move. A single human voice echoed across all Zarkari communication channels. "You should have left when you had the chance." Then, a massive explosion erupted in the heart of the fleet. Humans had hacked into the Zarkari flagship's systems and detonated its power core. The blast tore through the armada, and the once mighty warships fell from the sky like dying stars. Krivox's realization. Krivox survived. Barely. His flagship was gone. His army was broken. His fleet was in full retreat. And as he watched Earth from his escape pod, a single thought burned in his mind. We never had a chance. Humans weren't just strong. They weren't just smart. They were something else entirely. Something far more dangerous than the Zarkari had ever imagined. And now, the Empire would remember this day as the first time they were truly defeated. The first time they learned the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the nightmare that haunted the hunters. The mighty Zarkari Empire had never known fear. They had never known what it felt like to be outmatched, outmaneuvered, and outwitted. Until now. The skies above Earth were filled with burning Zarkari warships, their once powerful fleet reduced to wreckage. Across the planet, surviving Zarkari forces flood into the shadows, desperate to escape the relentless human hunters. And Supreme Commander Krivox. He could only watch his empire crumble before his eyes. The Great Retreat. Krivox stood in the command center of his emergency warship, staring at the latest reports. His forces were in full retreat. What had begun as a glorious invasion had become a desperate fight for survival. Supreme Commander, General Ralvik's voice was shaking. We must retreat from Earth. The losses are too great. Krivox's claws dug into the metal table before him. Retreat. The word burned in his mind like a curse. The Zarkari Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had never been defeated. And yet, here they were, running, like prey. How did this happen? Krivox whispered. How did we lose? The unbreakable enemy. The truth was simple. They had underestimated humans. The Zarkari had believed that humanity was weak, that they would submit easily, like so many species before them. But humans, they didn't just fight. They adapted. They didn't just defend. They attacked. They didn't just resist. They made the Zarkari fear them. Across the battlefield, Zarkari forces were being hunted down, their numbers dwindling every hour. Some Zarkari soldiers tried to surrender, but humans only stared at them, their expressions unreadable. Others tried to hide, but no matter where they went, they found strange human messages scrawled on walls, on the ground, on their stolen supplies. Run while you still can. This is our planet. You are not safe. Krivox had never seen warfare like this. It wasn't about firepower. It wasn't about numbers. It was about breaking the enemy's spirit. And the humans had won that war. One last stand. A desperate plan formed in Krivox's mind. If they could not win, then they had to leave a mark. A final act to remind humanity that the Zarkari Empire was not weak. We will deploy our last warship, he ordered. Target Earth's largest city. If we must retreat, we will make them pay. Ralvik hesitated. But Supreme Commander, our forces are scattered. We have no reinforcements. The humans will. They will watch as we destroy their world. Krivox snarled. Even in defeat, we will be feared. Ralvik nodded slowly, but his eyes held doubt. And then, alarms blared. Human attack force inbound. A soldier shouted. They're coming straight for us. Krivox's heart stopped. They had expected humans to hide, to wait. Instead, They were coming straight at them. The final battle. The Zarkari warship prepared to fire. But before they could launch their attack, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Boom! One of the engines detonated. Sparks and fire erupted through the control room. How? Krivox roared. Then, a voice crackled over their communication system. A human voice. "You're too slow, Commander." Krivox turned toward the viewing screen. Human fighter jets streaked toward them, weaving through space like predators. And behind them, a stolen Zarkari battleship, one of their own, was now under human control. Krivox realized the truth too late. The humans had already infiltrated their fleet. They had lost. The last words of a conqueror. The warship's systems failed one by one. Explosions rocked the hull. The great Zarkari war machine was now nothing more than a dying beast in space. Krivox collapsed into his chair, his golden eyes dark with defeat. He activated one last transmission. A message to the Zarkari High Command. "Earth cannot be conquered," he admitted, his voice hollow. "These humans, they are not like the others. They do not break. They do not surrender. They are something else." And with those final words, Supreme Commander Krivox's warship was engulfed in flames. His last sight, a human pilot staring at him from the cockpit of a stolen Zarkari fighter. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. This was Earth's victory. This was humanity's revenge. The war was over. The mighty Zarkari Empire, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, had been defeated. Not by superior weapons, not by overwhelming numbers, but by humans, a species the Zarkari had thought would be easy prey. Now, Earth stood victorious, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The final retreat. Zarkari warships, once proud symbols of conquest, now fled like wounded animals. Only a few battered ships remained, their forces shattered. Earth's defenders watched from the ground as the last of the invaders retreated into the cold void of space. On board the final command ship, General Ralvek stood in silence, staring at the ruins of their fleet. He had fought beside Supreme Commander Krivox, had believed in the glory of conquest. But now he knew the truth. The Zarkari had never faced an enemy like humans before. They had never fought prey that turned into predators. With a deep breath, he sent a final message to the Zarkari High Command. "Earth cannot be taken. We underestimated them. Never make that mistake again." And with that, the last Zarkari warship jumped to light speed, leaving Earth behind, the world that would not needle. As the last enemy ship vanished from Earth's orbit, the human resistance erupted in celebration. Across every city, every battlefield, every underground bunker, the message spread. We won. Civilians emerged from hiding, soldiers embraced, and the sky filled with the sounds of victory. The world had been on the edge of destruction. And yet, against impossible odds, humanity had survived. But this was not just a victory. This was a warning to the galaxy. Earth was not a planet to be conquered. Humans were not a species to be enslaved. They were something far more dangerous. And now, the universe would remember the day the hunters became the hunted. The message to the stars. In the ruins of a destroyed city, a group of engineers worked quickly. They had recovered a Zarkari transmission beacon, a device meant for interstellar communication. Now, it would be used to send a message of humanity's choosing. A soldier stepped forward, adjusting the signal. "Are you sure about this?" A young woman, one of the resistance leaders, nodded. "They need to know." With a deep breath, she spoke into the beacon. Her voice would echo across the stars, reaching anyone who was listening. "To all species of the galaxy, Earth was attacked. We were hunted. We were meant to fall. But we did not. The Zarkari thought we were weak. They thought we would break. They were wrong. To those who seek to conquer us, be warned. Humanity does not kneel. We do not run. We are here. And we are watching. The transmission ended. The message had been sent, and somewhere across the galaxy it was being heard. A new beginning. The war was over, but Earth had changed forever. Humans were no longer just another species. They were now something greater, a force the galaxy could not ignore. Some wondered if another enemy would come. But if they did, they would find a planet ready for them. A planet that had defeated the great Sarkari Empire. A planet that had become legend. And as the sun rose over the ruins of war, one truth became clear. This was not the end of humanity's story. It was just the beginning.